Well, there's been some interesting developments this past week in the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C. So, after Biden took power after the election in 2020, so it was early 2021, there was all these rumors and people talking about, you know what, they could make Donald Trump Speaker of the House, and then they could impeach Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and then he's third in line. He would become president. And you hear things like that, and you think, well, that seems pretty far fetched. But this past week, Matt Getz? Is it?
Yeah, Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
Howard Gates, I guess Matt Gaetz got together with, I think, the majority of Democrats in Congress. And for the first time in all of American history, they voted out the Speaker of the House. So the way the line of succession goes, like there's, a war, something happens to the president and vice president. Line of succession is the Speaker of the House. Whoever the Speaker of the House is the third most powerful person in the world. So if something happens to the president and vice president, the Speaker of the House becomes president. So I think the way it goes is that means if, say, the president and the vice president are impeached for, which Congress has the sole power to impeach a president, they hold a trial and everything, which, you look at all the corrupt dealings with Biden and Hunter and the laptop, which was all out before the election, and then old Twitter sandbagged the whole thing. You had 51 former intelligence people say, well, this is all Russian disinformation, and here we are with 3 years later, we know that everything was pretty much, this was Hunter Biden's laptop, so all the stuff that was on there was true. And so when Twitter basically banned, was it the New York Post, I think it was, that originally reported that? They're like one of the oldest papers in the country and going back over a century. And so been around a long time. They're a news outlet. And so the people at Twitter decided, it's disinformation based on all these former intelligence people who basically all lied. They didn't look at anything. They just didn't like Trump. So they all signed their name and said, it's Russian disinformation, just ignore the laptop. And here we are years later, and it turns out that all that stuff is true. There's an obvious paper and digital trail there of stuff. And so, but you look at what the FBI's done, the Justice Department, they just kind of, for the most part, kind of look the other way, because the people at the top that control the things that get investigated are mostly political appointees that are favorable to the Democratic Party, because typically they are Democrats. And so they don't really do anything. They slow roll it. And so now all this stuff is one of the reasons why Speaker McCarthy got booted out is because he didn't do anything. There were a lot of things that he committed to Gates and a bunch of the other America First, if you will, politicians in Congress. And so, because this has never happened in history, there's never ever been a Speaker of the House ever been removed in 200 plus years that America's been a country. And so this is like an unprecedented thing. He gets booted out, and Matt Gaetz is like, he didn't keep his word, plain and simple. He was going to subpoena Hunter and look into the family, and what he was talking about on another podcast was how Speaker McCarthy he's really good at fundraising, and so he basically controls about $500 million in capital and campaign contributions and money that flows in to the Republican candidates and the Republican Party, and so he has a lot of weight. And so, but he also owes all the people so there's people that are contributing those kinds of sums of money, the oligarchs, if you will, in the West here. They expect to get a return on their investment. They expect him to do things he's promised. And so, because this has never happened, you can imagine he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do all this. He gets elected, and what does he do? He didn't do any of it. And so they got together with the Democrats. What's interesting, and what was reported, was Nancy Pelosi said, hey, I got your back to McCarthy. If they ever try to boot you out, I'll vote with the Democrats to keep you in. And she totally turned around and stabbed him in the back and voted to boot him out. And then in retaliation, the Speaker pro temp, I guess they call it, the guy that took over, basically kicked Nancy Pelosi, and I think was it Steny Hoyer, the other guy, or one of the other top Democrats. They have these offices in the back of Congress that are away from the public and the reporters and everybody, where most of the big deals, the backroom deals, actually get done. and she's had this office, forever.
I
And
think she was still actually
he
in the
says you got
Speaker's
like
office.
3 days to get out of these offices. And, so that was in retaliation because he's pissed off that, she decided to get McCarthy thrown out. And so you have all these people, and, so I hear all this stuff like from years ago, like, oh, Trump could be Speaker of the House. And they're like, well, that sounds pretty far-fetched. And now here we are. It's all been reported in the media, and they're even asking, at the White House press briefings what they think about it. And, so you got a lot of Republicans in Congress are talking to Trump about potentially becoming Speaker of the House. And so the Speaker of the House sets the agenda for Congress. He sets the agenda and things to vote on. And, as Trump likes to refer to himself, he's the ultimate deal maker. And so there's a real, and they asked him, he says, well, I would do the job temporarily until they found somebody to do the job. And he says he put forward Jim Jordan to become the new Speaker of the House. But the interesting thing is if somehow he's able to put some deal together, and then he can be the one that basically votes on impeaching Biden, impeaching Kamala Harris, and booting him out. What an interesting. I mean, it's more possible today than it was 3 years ago, and because a lot of people are like, what happened to my 401k? Everybody's seen those changes, so it's pretty fascinating thing. There's this is part of the rules in Congress for Speaker of the House. I think it might be just the Republican Party might have this. And so what it says is that nobody can run and become Speaker of the House that is basically under indictment for felonies that carry a prison sentence of like 2 or more years. And so some of the things that he's charged with would carry a sentence of longer than that. But, however, the Republicans, since they had the majority, they set the rules, they could basically vote to change that rule to where they just eliminate it, basically. And then they could, they get the votes. If Trump being the ultimate deal maker, he could put something together where everybody would get everything that they wanted. It's fascinating to me that here we are 3 years later, and 3 years ago was like, that sounds kind of crazy and far-fetched, and here we are. It's like, it's more of a possibility today than it was 3 years ago.
I mean, if they say that they can make him Speaker, guess what? They have the ultimate decision. They're going to do it.
It would put them all basically publicly in front of the whole country. You're either in or you're out. You either support the guy that's that's leading in all the polls and is going to be the nominee, or you're a backstabber. You're either with us or you're against us.
Yeah, that's a good way to weed people out that way. But also, it's like, I think he can get.
That's going to either show like the corruption and what's going on, and say, "Look, we're taking it back. We're getting rid of Sleepy Joe."
I think they could impeach Garland, the Attorney General. I think they could remove him as well.
Yeah.
Because they,
that's the thing.
They have the power.
This position comes with so much power. They're gonna try everything they can to not allow this to happen.
That's so fascinating. What a crazy turn of events. It's like the greatest show on earth,
Everyone thought it was over. Well, it's coming right back. Season 2.
Well, if you remember, Trump's 2 big books. Number 1 was The Art of the Deal, which was his first one. And the second one was after he became bankrupt and lost all his money and then turned everything around. Because in the early 90s, you had the SNL crisis and all that stuff. And he wrote The Art of the Comeback. And so this would be like one of the greatest comebacks ever. I mean, it's in his DNA. The ultimate deal maker, the ultimate comeback guy. The guy that the deep state, that the blob, as they call it in D.C., thought they banished this dude, and yet he could potentially become Speaker of the House and become president. He could decide that the agenda is we're going to impeach Biden.
See, I don't think he would come through. I think he would just be Speaker. I don't think he would impeach Biden. I don't know if they're impeaching the Biden part, though. I don't know if they do that because of the time.
Well, that was one of the things that McCarthy was supposed to do. They were supposed to subpoena Hunter, and just wherever the evidence led is like, that's where the evidence led.
But he never did that, though.
No, he didn't keep his word. So to him, remember, no speaker in all of American history has ever been removed for any reason. Never happened before. So if you're him, you're like, oh yeah, sure, Chunky, oh yeah, well, I got you. Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, there's like 8 or 10 of them that he committed to, and they're like, oh, those are the people that are way on the others, the American First
Yeah, I
ones.
remember that.
And so he smiles their face, and like most politicians, like, hey, $500 million versus keeping your promise to 8 people that for him and the rest of the Republican Party, they don't really like those 8 people, Gates and the rest of them. They kind of have the attitude, oh, you don't deserve to be here. You're not part of our club. But the fact that, they booted his ass out. It's never happened before. So I'm sure he felt very comfortable. Even when Gates said he was going to do it, McCarthy was on Twitter basically, do it, bring it, kind of was his attitude. And then, like, not 24 hours later, the Democrats all line up and voted him out, including Pelosi. She stabbed his ass in the back. It's not surprising at all.
So I think it'd be really interesting if Trump did make it as the Speaker of the House and what the timeline would look like if they do try and impeach Biden and Kamala. I think it'd be a much easier case to impeach Biden. Kamala, I know she's definitely incompetent, but I don't know how much dirt they really have on her to get her out.
Well, she slept her way to the top.
Yep.
So I don't really know if
I don't think there's any laws against that, though.
Yeah, but what are her actual, like, qualifications to be a VP?
Or potentially president if Biden gets impeached.
Yeah, God forbid. Let's not even go there. I mean...
Well, that's what I'm saying. So Biden gets impeached because that's clear cut.
That's clear cut.
But then if Camilla's still there, what do you do with that?
Camilla or Camel?
I don't know.
Kamala.
I think it's
Kamala.
Is it camel toe?
It's Kamala.
I think it's camel toe. It doesn't matter.
camel
I don't
toe.
think a camel should be running our country, or a prostitute or some other
Somebody
type
who
of
sucked
hooker.
and fucked their way to the top.
I just think it's
Yeah, but it's the
Pretty
first
sure.
woman president.
I'm pretty
that's
sure
not
she
a good
has-
role model.
As a woman, doesn't that make you proud? That's the first woman president.
I think that's a
It doesn't
horrible.
matter if she's a woman or a
horrible-
man. As long as you
It's-
know what you're doing, it
that's
doesn't
a
matter.
horrible role model for any type of young American girl